Hey, what's up, and welcome to this episode of EST, the podcast for established church leaders by established church leaders. My name is Josh.
My name is Sam, and it's the most wonderful time of the year.
Oh,
Do
yeah?
you know?
What
Do you know?
are
Do
you?
you know
What
why?
do you have?
You do know
I don't.
why, because I tried something and and then we rarely have to restart an episode because we just roll with it. But we had to restart this one. But yes,
That one, yeah, that one flopped. What's the
look,
most wonderful time?
look.
Oh, you got little pieces of orange wax that you're eating.
It's autumn mix. It's autumn mix. I love the autumn mix.
What's
Yes.
in autumn mix that's different than just your good old candy corn?
Well, I like candy corn, but it's the regular candy corn, it's the chocolate candy corn, and then it's the pumpkins. And my kids love the pumpkins. They will steal all my pumpkins.
Is there any legitimate difference between the pumpkins and candy corn? It's just a bigger candy corn.
Well, it's just but it's a pumpkin. It's shaped
Oh,
differently. It's got a little different
oh,
color on it.
hmm. Do you think that do your kids and you think that the M&Ms taste different because of their colors, or y'all know that that's not true as well?
Well, I'd like to think that they do.
Oh, but they do not. We got an episode today. We're going to talk about an attitude adjustment, and it falls on a very the recording of this falls on a very heavy day, and I think that that has something to do with it. So we could talk about that in just a little bit as well. But
Yeah.
before we do,
Yeah.
let's talk about our
Church
sponsor.
church teams, they are having a special demo for our listeners. So here's the deal. For the first 15 registrants, you get a $20 Amazon gift card. So they are willing to give you something to be there. It's 30 minutes on November the 7th at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So you can sign up at est.church. They've got a whole new system that they want to show you. They want EST to be part of this launch, and they're giving you an opportunity to see it before anybody else. So you want to be a part of this, go to est.church. You can also use text to church and send demo, DEMO, to 817-677-9750. But that'll be in the show notes as well. But
Mm-hmm.
perhaps the easiest way is to go to est.church and get you that $20 Amazon gift card for a 30-minute demo. And, you're going to have fun anyway, checking this new thing out. So would love for you to be there. I know Boyd and his team at Church Teams would love for you to be there as well. If you are thinking anything church management software or anything when it comes to scheduling or texting or giving, you should be there. You'd love to see this. So go to est.church.
Absolutely. All right, so I alluded to it just a minute ago. The day that we are recording this is Wednesday, September 11th. So it's a heavy day for our country. And there's this phrase that the body keeps the score, in which you may feel like down or anxious one day, and there's no observable reason. Like everything's fine. But then you start to ask some questions, and you find out that that day or that season of life or something, that couple of weeks, like the beginning of school or the close of whatever, you had some traumatic event happen in your past, and so there's just a heaviness that weighs on you. I subscribe to that theory. I think I don't know if you do, Sam, but I do feel like even today I was feeling sort of anxious, nervous about things, and there's no real reason to feel that way. And I've just come to the conclusion it's because it is 9/11. There is that feeling of anxiety that just kind of weighs on your heart. With that, for people our age, maybe slightly younger, I mean, there's a whole generation of people that it's just a detail in a history book. They don't really emote when it comes to this day. So we're going to talk about similar settings of other events or circumstances that may cause you to emote in a way that needs your attitude to be adjusted.
Yeah, and so let's clarify that everyone has problems with emotions and attitudes, and there's nothing wrong with you having a certain emotion at a certain time. Sometimes you can't even help it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but there gets to be a point where something needs to be done about it, and that's really what we're talking about. Not the I'm just grumpy and I'll get over it sort of thing. But when it's like, hey, you're kind of in a funk for whatever reason, and you
Mm,
really need to work on this. So one way that people get there, pastors in particular, is ongoing insecurities. We all have our own insecurities. We all have things that kind of set us off. We have things that we worry about more than others about ourselves.
mhm.
But when you don't deal with your own insecurities, it will flesh itself out in your emotions and in your attitude. And a lot of times
Yeah.
you'll take it, you see it all the time, right? It's not just pastors with their churches, it's just in any sort of relationship where people will have insecurities and then they will take that out on others.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I completely agree. One of the most powerful things that I have found with my insecurities is just telling people, "This makes me feel insecure." Um, I just say it out loud, and it helps. I don't have a ton of what you would call insecurities. I'm a pretty secure dude, just in my career, in my abilities, in my relationships. But there are certain circumstances that once you start to feel a certain way, I have told my church, I try to tell my children, I try to, coach myself in this way. Your feelings are signals to something that's going on. It's like somebody said one time, it's the light on the dashboard. Your emotions are the light on the dashboard. It doesn't tell you what is wrong, but it tells you something is wrong or something is not balanced. So when I start to feel insecure, I like to a lot of times just stop and ask myself, why do I feel insecure about this? Try to get to the bottom of that and then express it and tell the person, hey, I know you don't mean this right here, but when we talk about this topic, I'm insecure because of, I'm maybe afraid that this result will happen. And that allows the person to step in there and shine light in that area and say, oh, that's not happening. No, don't worry about that. I didn't mean to say it that way. I'm really talking about this over here. And then you can address that over to that side. So if you're feeling insecure about whatever it might be, Sam, what do you think common insecurities are with church leaders, maybe particular lead pastors?
Yeah, I think the comparison game gets to a lot of people.
Mm,
I pastor a church, like we had close to 700 on Sunday,
mhm,
but
mhm,
there's a church in our area that probably had 5 or 6 thousand,
mhm,
and I'm a little peon, compared to that.
mhm,
Uh, there's another church that's growing a little faster than us. We're about the same size, and it's one of those things where you go, "What am I doing wrong?" Well, I'm
mm,
not doing anything wrong. Actually, we're doing pretty good at West Bradenton, and we should all celebrate what's happening. But you get a little insecure about that. My own personal insecurities are, I'm somebody who has to process a little more than most people. I learned that, just I was not the best student until really I got to high school, and I've always kind of carried
mhm,
that with me where I take standardized tests and I'm like below average. And so I
mhm,
learned that I'm just going
mhm,
to have to work harder than others. So some people think I'm
mhm,
smart, and it makes me feel good. But it's like, actually, I'm pretty average. I just don't like telling people
mhm,
that, and I'll work hard to prove otherwise. So I think that pastors can have a wide range of insecurities. I think the comparison game is probably number one. I think how people look is also, maybe more women than men, but I think men struggle with that as well. And there's usually some physical feature that you don't like about yourself that causes,
mhm.
insecurities. And I also think that it gets better with age. You know, some of the things that, man, I look back on some of the things that I was insecure about like 20 years ago, and I'm like, you're a doofus. I mean, you're just a doofus. If I could go back and tell myself that, I would. I'd be like,
Yeah, don't worry about
just
that.
don't be so, it's dumb. Just get over yourself.
Mhm.
The Bob Newhart sketch, stop it.
Stop it.
Stop it.
Stop it. Yeah. I love that. I think a lot of pastors are insecure. Well, I will say my insecurity is unmet expectations. There's just this constant, not my expectations of others, but like, I don't know how many times you get in trouble as a pastor because you didn't do something. You didn't show up to something. You didn't say something. You didn't that that you didn't even know. Like, I didn't know I was supposed to be there. I didn't know, nobody invited me, nobody said anything. I don't know that person that well, and then all of a sudden I'm finding out that I have disappointed somebody. So I can really get in my head about trying to guess what everybody's standard is for me, and then trying to meet that standard. And so I can be real insecure once people start talking about how maybe I didn't meet a standard that they had for me. So
I mean, that's a really good one. Mine's slightly different than that, but let's talk about unmet expectations. I had one this weekend
mm,
where I was planning on doing some family time. I had some very specific things I needed to get done on Saturday. That's my day off. And then I just got calls and contacts, and, I needed to
mm,
be somewhere now, and so's in the hospital. Um, and I'm always glad to serve. And hear me out. My people know that if I just need to say no, that I'll say no. And they're good. Honestly, my church is really, really good about it. So I don't want to complain too much about West Bradenton, because they would support me in me saying, you know what, guys, I just can't do it right now. But
yeah.
it made me so grumpy because, here I was. I felt like it was going to be impossible to meet everyone's expectations that day. Let me just put it that way. There was 4 different groups of people that needed me all at once. And it's like, I'm just going to have to, I thought I was disappointing, certain, and it ended up, I wasn't really disappointing anybody, and everyone understood, and it was fine, and it all worked out, and I didn't really need to say anything. But it made me so grumpy for a little bit. And had I stayed there, I would have stayed pretty grumpy and rolled into Sunday that way, which
Yeah.
is not a good way to preach.
Mm-mm. Yeah, so we're talking about attitude adjustments, and our hope is that you, as a listener, if you find yourself in these spots, you'll know how to get out of it. And so, if there is an unmet expectation, well, let me back up just a second. If you're feeling insecure, obviously, as Christians, we know that our security is in Christ and in what He did and what He accomplished. And so, you want to root yourself there. Don't put your identity in your performance and those sort of things. When we put our identity and take our eyes off of Jesus, we become insecure. And you ought to be, because if you are your Messiah, you are not secure. You need a better hero
I
than
get,
you do.
I get, you know what I get sort of insecure about is not that I have gray hair. It's that I'm always in front of a camera, and there's usually 3 or 4 strands that are just sticking straight out. And I'm
Hmm.
not overly concerned about that, but it
Yeah.
really bothers me. And so
Mm.
if you've wondered why I don't comb my hair and you watch this on YouTube, like I do. I do. I can't help it. It just goes
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, Sam, why don't you tell me, as a bald man, more and more about your hair problems? Yeah, I'd love to hear how your hair is bothering you. But yeah, yeah. So there's that, and then the unmet expectations. So those are more driven when we're talking about an attitude adjustment. One of the things that can really get a lot of church leaders in a funk or get really just a poor attitude is the unmet expectations of other people. Like a committee is not performing the way you want them to, or a staff person, or a volunteer, or maybe your spouse. And so in that setting, I would just try to reverse it. One of the things that makes me insecure is when people don't tell me the expectation I was supposed to meet, and then they're mad about it. I think the same's true on the other side. Of course it is. Did you clearly articulate what it was that you were expecting out of that meeting, or out of that group, or out of that organization? I find that, like, 100 out of 100 times, if you will ask yourself, what am I actually expecting this person to do? What am I expecting this group to accomplish? And you start to write that stuff down, you'll realize you have unreasonable expectations, or it's just this one thing. This is really all I want them to do. And then I go into meetings and I say, guys, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for serving in this way. I would love to talk about anything you guys want to talk about, but the one thing I'm needing tonight for us to accomplish is XYZ. And you'll see so many people step up to the plate and just get that done. And it's such a great thing. So clearly articulate that. If you're having an issue or you're starting to feel anxious towards a staff member because of unmet expectations, just go sit down with them and say, when I think about your position, the one thing that I really need you to accomplish is this, followed by this, followed by this. I feel like in the second one, you're not really getting there. Can you help me understand your perspective on that? You start to really articulate that. They will almost always, I find that good-hearted Christians excel clear expectations instead of underperform clear expectations. Usually the problem is in the communication. So take that bad attitude and turn it on yourself for a little bit there, buck up, buckaroo, and then make sure that you have written it down and clearly told them what it is that you need them to do.
Another thing that can make me have a bad attitude is when others are
Mhm.
agitated at me and I
Mhm.
respond in kind, especially if I think that their agitation is unwarranted. Now,
Mm.
this is uh, more of a marital thing for me than a
I was
church thing.
just about to say that same thing. It is crazy. I can be so like, Sam, you could just be the most sour person to me, and I'll just be like, "Man, Sam, what's wrong? Hey, let's get to the bottom of this. I want to help you." But Jackie gets a little. She gives me a look, and I'm like, "Oh, well, fine with that. You can just go sit over there. I'm done with you, anyways." So yeah, it's a marital issue.
Yeah, I don't. It's probably too much information for our listeners, but yeah, like I'm prone to say, well, what's that look for? Like what?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
any other person on the planet could do it, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm just gonna roll with this. But yeah, Aaron does it, and it's like, oh, okay,
Mm.
all right, we're gonna do this. Let's do it.
Yeah, Jackie
Um,
and I have had 19 years of fighting over the faces she makes. It's not anything else she does, but she makes faces, and I'm just like, oh, that drives me crazy. Don't make a face. So, anyways, I'm
oh
glad
man,
to hear
but
that it's not just me.
no, it is well, it is me. I am the problem, but it sounds like we share the same problem. But
No, it's her.
the the point is, there are people likely in your church that are more apt to get under your skin and
Mm,
agitate you and give you just a bad attitude. And frankly, that's more your attitude is on you. Maybe they're not in the right, maybe they are trying to get under your skin, but if you're the leader, you really got to be above that.
yeah.
And it's not right for people to try to poke or to agitate you, but it can really be a problem. And if pastors lose it in certain scenarios, like if you just kind of what's the phrase, fly off the handle, lose your religion,
Mhm, mhm.
in a setting that's got the wrong people in it, it can be as bad as losing your job. That's a bit extreme, but I've certainly
Mhm.
heard of those cases where somebody got angry or agitated, said things that they shouldn't have said, and it really hurt their leadership and even
Yeah.
eventually in some rare cases led to the dismissal of the pastor.
Mhm, mhm. Hey, Sam, what before we go on to the last couple there, what does cranky Sam look like? So what do you do? You just snap at people, or you what's
No,
cranky Sam look like?
so good point. I'm not an angry person. Like
No, you're not.
I
Mm-mm.
don't I'm a visceral person and I am an intense person, but I don't get angry. But I can get agitated. So when it's angry or agitated, Sam, I really I get quiet. I get pretty
Mm.
quiet and I get pretty withdrawn, because I don't want to say something that
Yeah.
I shouldn't say. But I also get that way when I'm really, really tired. So sometimes it's hard to tell. I'll
Yeah.
just, I just know that about myself. Are you tired? Are you agitated? Sometimes it's hard with me to know the difference. Sometimes I don't even know the difference. But yeah, I just get very withdrawn and I check out. And I know why. I know why. Because I grew up as a kid just moving all the time. So I was always getting a new set of friends, and you kind of grew up this way too. So honestly,
Mhm.
and this is really bad. This is part of my personality that I don't like, but it's just who I am. I can move on pretty quickly. Like
Mhm.
if like that set of friends or this church, they don't want me anymore, which has which has happened in my life. I'm like, basically, screw you guys. I'm going home. Yeah, I'll
Mhm.
see you guys later. I'm moving on to something else. And that's not the greatest. There's some benefits to that, but it's also not the greatest of character traits.
Mm.
But yeah, when I get agitated, I usually get pretty withdrawn. I think it's more a defense mechanism than anything else.
Yeah. I'll get real direct. I'm not a kind of person that does niceties, or I got to force myself to make small talk and that sort of stuff. And so when I get irritated or stressed out or something like that, I'll just get direct. I'm not faking anything anymore. I didn't put the frosting on the cupcake. You're just getting the cupcake. That's how it is. This is the answer. And sometimes people think I'm mad at them, and I'm not. I don't have anything else to give. So
I can be
what's these
pretty
other?
direct. I can be direct with people that I don't know.
Mm-hmm,
If I'm calling a customer service line and they're obviously giving me the runaround, or somebody's trying to do something to me that I don't want them to do to
mm-hmm,
me,
mm-hmm,
yeah, I'll be pretty direct. But all right, so the next one is stress. So this is another way that, and I think a lot of these are related, of course. But stress is a little different than agitation. Stress to me is more ongoing, and agitation is more acute and in the moment.
mm-hmm,
Hopefully, you don't live an agitated life. That'd be a pretty miserable life. But some people stay stressed. And when you stay stressed for a week, a month, or sometimes even longer, hopefully not, but it can really weigh on you.
mm-hmm.
And for me, what happens is stress dulls everything about me. So I'm less sharp. I'm less, um, I'm not fresh. Uh, I I am not as good in all of my marriage. I'm not as good in my church, and my sermons aren't as good. It just dulls when I'm stressed. It dulls everything about me. What does it do to you?
I would say similarly, I get very kind of like beat up. I think for me, if we're talking about attitude adjustment, once you find out that you are stressed, the thing that causes me stress is this pursuit towards perfection. I can have a big board of problems, which we talked about in the last episodes. I think you should go back and listen if you haven't. But I could have 10 things that need to get done. And the way my personality is I want to move from broken to perfect in one step. I want to fix it right now. And one of the things I'm learning in this season of my life, especially after my last pastorate and just that was just that was 4 years of just straight stress and having to fix some of that sort of stuff and even moving just to fix some of that stress was being comfortable with progress as opposed to having to have perfection. If I work on something for 3 months and we took one step forward, that's good. That's a good one step forward. My problem is I always want to work on something for 3 hours and fix it and not have to go back and work on this slowly with lots of conversations. I was talking to another pastor friend just today, and he was having a similar problem. And I find that this is such a common problem with pastors that we want to go from the broken to the fixed in one step. And so one of the things that helps adjust my attitude is when I'm stressed is being comfortable and appreciative of progress over perfection.
I like that, progress over perfection. And then the last one, and I think just about anybody should be able to relate to this. If you figured this one out, let us know. We'll do a whole episode with you. Failure,
Mm-hmm.
failure. I mean, goodness, when you fail, I think for most of us, the vast majority of us, it'll put us in a bad attitude. I know it does me.
I agree. I mean, unmet expectations are with people. Failure has to do with like you did a big event, a big Easter event, big push, and it was just the people that were there, not as many as you wanted. And in this again, it's sort of like the expectations is what are you hoping to accomplish? Was it preaching Jesus? Well, you did that, you didn't fail. um, did you learn something from it? I've heard coaches say, if you fail and you learned, you didn't fail. Just learn from it and adjust going forward. Remember, we're just trying to make progress and not be perfect. So in all of these, it really is more of an understanding or an adjustment in you that needs to happen.
Yeah, and hopefully you can relate to these. And the reason Josh and I wanted to do this is because, well, we live with it too. We try to
Mm,
be as real and as raw as we can on this show. Yeah, I've been there. I've needed an attitude adjustment. My wife would say that it happens more frequently than I would like to admit. And I
mhm.
won't speak for Jackie. I can't, but maybe she might say the same thing. I
She
don't.
probably would. But she made a face, so it's her fault. Hey, thanks so much for listening today. We are so glad that you listened. We hope that your attitude is helped with some conversation with us. And that's all the time we have for today. We will catch you next week.